Tune in for a tale, words that set sail.
Digital Splendor, Literature Illuminated.
All right, let's dive into one of the greatest cautionary tales ever told, straight from the ancient world. We're talking about the story of a king who literally had everything you could possibly imagine and learned what it was all worth only after he lost every last bit of it.
I want you to just picture this for a second. The richest man on the planet, his entire kingdom has just crumbled, and he's tied to a massive bonfire about to be burned alive. And in these final terrifying moments, he's not screaming for his guards, he's not crying about his gold. No, he just whispers a name. The name of a man he'd called a fool years and years ago.
So you've got to be asking, right? How on earth did it come to this? How did the man who was the very definition of good fortune end up a prisoner on a pyre? Well, to get it, we've got to go back to the absolute peak of his power, and to a single conversation that really sealed his fate.
Okay, so let's meet our guy, King Croesus of Lydia. We're in the 6th century BC, and this man's name is basically a synonym for unbelievably rich. His empire is huge, his power is absolute, and in his own mind, there's just zero doubt about it. He is the happiest, most fortunate man alive. Period.
So one day, the famous Athenian wise man Solon visits his court, and Croesus just can't resist the urge to show off. I mean, he gives him the grand tour of his treasuries. We're talking literal mountains of gold. Then he asks his totally loaded question. So, Solon, my friend, of all the men you've ever met, who's the happiest? He's just beaming, waiting for Solon to say, "Why, it's you. Of course, Your Majesty."
But that's not what happens, not even close. And what Solon says next reveals this massive clash in how they see the world. For Croesus, happiness is all about stuff you can see and count. Immense wealth, a vast empire, power. But for Solon, he points to these totally ordinary guys. First, a man named Telos, who lived a good life, saw his family prosper, and then died a hero in battle. Then he mentions two brothers, Cleobes and Biton, who were so good to their mother that the gods rewarded them with the perfect death, peacefully, in their sleep.
Croesus is, he's furious. He feels totally insulted. And that's when Solon delivers his final, killer piece of wisdom. Look, fortune can change in an instant, and life can only really be judged by how it ends. He says you can call a man fortunate, sure, but never truly happy until he's dead. Croesus thinks this is completely insane and pretty much kicks Solon out. But boy, those words are going to come back to haunt him.
As soon as Solon leaves, it's like a switch gets flipped. Fate, or what Herodotus calls divine retribution, starts to come for Croesus. And the very first blow is an absolutely devastating family tragedy that proves just how little control he really has.
This part of the story really shows you just can't escape your destiny. Croesus has this terrifying dream that his son is going to be killed by an iron weapon. So he does what any worried parent would do. He pulls his son from the army, locks up all the spears and swords, everything. But then, a giant boar starts terrorizing the kingdom, and his son begs to go hunt it. Croesus caves, but he sends a trusted friend, Adrastos, to protect him. And in the most cruel, twisted turn of events, it's Adrastos who throws a javelin at the boar, misses, and accidentally kills the prince. The prophecy comes true in the worst way imaginable.
Just drowning in grief, Croesus needs a distraction, anything to take his mind off his loss. He turns his attention to the growing threat on his border, the Persian Empire, led by the legendary Cyrus the Great. But before he does anything rash, he decides he needs some divine advice. So he goes to the most famous psychic in the world, the Oracle at Delphi, and he asks a very simple question. Should I attack Persia?
And this is where we see that classic human flaw, right? Hearing exactly what you want to hear. The oracle's answer is beautifully ambiguous. It says, if Croesus attacks the Persians, he will destroy a great empire. Croesus is over the moon. He's thinking, that's it. It's a green light. The empire that's going to be destroyed, it's got to be Persia's, right?
He gets a second prophecy too, one that warns him to run for the hills when a mule becomes king. Croesus just laughs this off. He thinks, a mule as king? That's ridiculous. My kingdom is safe forever. What he fails to see is the riddle. Cyrus was the mule. His mother was a high-born Median princess, and his father was a lower-status Persian.
So, completely blinded by his grief, his pride, and his own skewed interpretation of these riddles, Croesus gathers his massive army and marches off to war, 100% convinced that he's about to achieve his greatest victory.
His downfall is just stunningly quick. He fights one battle, and it's basically a tie. Then he makes a colossal mistake. Thinking the war is on pause for the winter, he retreats to his capital city, Sardis, and sends his allied soldiers home. But Cyrus the Great didn't play by the rules. He marches his army right through the winter and launches a surprise attack. After a short siege, the supposedly unconquerable city falls.
And just like that, the oracle's prophecy came true. A great empire was destroyed, all right, but it wasn't Persia's, it was his own. Croesus is captured, his famous treasures are looted, and Cyrus sentences him to death. The game is over.
And that brings us full circle, right back to where we started. Croesus, stripped of everything, his crown, his gold, his kingdom, standing on that funeral pyre as the flames start to lick at his feet.
It's in this moment of total, absolute rock bottom, with everything he ever cared about gone, that the light bulb finally goes on. He finally understands what that wise old Athenian was trying to tell him all those years ago, and he cries out his name, Solon, Solon, Solon!
Now Cyrus hears this, and he gets curious. He calls for a translator and has Croesus tell him the whole story. And when Cyrus hears Solon's warning that fortune can turn on a dime for anyone, it hits him hard. He sees himself in Croesus' shoes and realizes his own incredible luck could vanish just as quickly. He panics and orders his men to put out the fire. But it's raging too high, so Croesus prays, and then something incredible happens. The sky opens up and a sudden rainstorm completely douses the flames.
In that moment, the man on the pyre is transformed. The arrogant, ignorant king is gone. In his place is a humbled, wise prisoner. He lost all the things he thought made him happy, the power, the wealth, but in losing them, he gained the one thing he was missing all along, wisdom. Cyrus spares his life, and Croesus actually becomes a valued advisor in the Persian court.
You know, there's a reason we're still talking about this story 2,500 years later. It forces you to ask some really big questions. Was Solon right? Is happiness about what you have, or is it about who you are? And how do you really measure a life? By its highest high, or by its peaceful end? It's just a timeless, powerful lesson that fortune is a wheel that never stops spinning, and that a little bit of humility, well, it can go a very long way.